Welcome, everybody. This is the 2023 City of Cibolo Council Member District 5 Candidate Forum. You know that because we have the clock. Should we call this meeting to order? Let's do it. This question and answer session is sponsored by the Texas Tri-County Chamber of Commerce. The TriCo vision is to build opportunities with a strong foundation and foster economic prosperity for Texas Tri-County communities. All right, so here's what's going on. Mark Allen ran for mayor. He won. Because he won, there's an open seat in District 5, so the city of Cibolo had to call a special election. And we have 4 candidates running for this open seat. But before we meet them, let's get some housekeeping out of the way.
Let's do it.
Are you registered to vote?
In all 6 counties.
All 6 counties and all your dead relatives, too, I bet.
You bet.
Yeah, I don't. All right.
We're going to win this one.
I know. Well, it's going to be rigged, right? And there's going to be an insurrection on January 6th. Not January 6th, actually. April 6th. So you have to be registered to vote by April 6th. You guys at home, make sure you get registered to vote by April 6th. Otherwise, you don't get a say. You also have to live in District 5, and we do have a map. Early voting starts April 24th, and it ends May 2nd. Then there's a couple-day break, and Election Day is May 6th. With that, let's go to agenda item number 2.
Do I have a motion?
Yeah.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, no. Well, there's only 2 of us. We don't have a quorum, but
hell.
It's on the agenda, so let's do it. All right. I'm happy to report that we have a question from the mayor. Several the Old Town business owners submitted questions. A female councilwoman in Cibolo. People can narrow that down. They're going to know who that is. But our basic format stays the same. We have the freedom clock.
The freedom clock. I love it.
The 4-minute freedom clock. And because we don't want people rambling on forever. We haven't really had that happen, but that could happen. Each candidate gets up to 4 minutes. I will say a lot of them were nervous.
Yes.
And so please be patient. And like everything out there, if you're a voter, get educated. One final thing before we get started. I want to thank all the candidates for coming in. We had Mr. Potts.
Yep.
He prefers to be called Mr. Potts. Jeff McLaughlin.
Mm-hmm. No kin to Sarah.
No. Sherry McDaniel came in. Very nice woman. And Norma Sanchez Stevens will be in as well. They all took the time to answer 16 questions. And here we go. Without further ado, podcasting from the Sound of Freedom studio, welcome to Local Politics. First question, what is your name and can you tell us about yourself? Who are you?
I'm Sherry McDaniel. I have lived in Cibolo for 4, going on 5 years now. I moved here from Houston to New Braunfels with my husband and my 2 sons in 2014. I lived in New Braunfels for 4 years, where both of my sons became very active in sports and band. In 2018, we decided to move to Cibolo because they have a great program for the band and athletics. And both of my sons were very active in that. So they both attended Steele High School. In 2020, we had a house built, and we live in a great neighborhood where we've made so many friends, and it's just been a really, really good place for our family to settle down.
So my name is Jeff McLaughlin. I lived in Cibolo for about the last 4 years. My family and I relocated here from Oregon. We spent the first 30 years out there. Really the big reason why we moved to this area was schools for our children. The economy was a little bit better, job market was a little bit better, and just really the overall community of people. Southern hospitality is a real thing. Nice. So, and my wife and I, we'd always kind of discussed retiring out in this area, and we just decided to pull the trigger a little bit early. As far as what I do outside of raising my kids and being a husband, I've been in the Air Force for almost 15 years now. First started in the Oregon Air National Guard, and when we moved out here, transferred to the Air Force Reserve. I'm an intel officer, so do a lot of... Try that again. All right. So work as an intel officer. So bulk of my job is analyzing complex problem sets, kind of coming up with creative solutions for different mission sets. And then outside of that, as far as my community involvement, for the last 2 years, I've been on 2 HOA boards, serving as the president of one and a member on the other. And that's really where I kind of got my passion to serve beyond just the military, but actually more local in the community. We had a lot of issues in our homeowners association. Previous property management company taking a lot of money from us, and we were in rough straits. And I figured, rather than sit back, be on the sidelines, and complain about what's going on, I could get in there and try to be a problem solution. And when this opportunity came up with Mayor Allen vacating his seat after he won the mayor, I saw this as another opportunity to be able to serve in a higher capacity just beyond my neighborhood.
Yeah, my name is Norma Sanchez-Stevens, and who I am is, well, right now, currently, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and honestly, it's what I put on my door hangers. I'm a servant leader. I am very active with my children. I am very active with my husband in supporting him also, as he also wears many hats, and he's in the Army National Guard, and I support him when he's away and whenever he gets called off to missions and whatever he has to do. And so I'm that pillar at home with also the kids. And I am a servant leader. I'm very active in our church. I have a heart for young people. So I am engaged with junior high students as well as with high school students. And so far right now, those are the 3 things that I'm really just in love with. Apart from that, though, I also like to take time also for getting involved with community events. For a while, I was involved with Loaves and Fishes. It's a homeless ministry that meets on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, and that is more out into San Antonio, and that is just really making sandwiches, putting snacks together, putting them in a bag, and really just going out and just delivering those and praying over the homeless. They battle with such addictions, and it's not easy to get over those things, but just to really just show them that love of Christ and to remind them that, yes, you are still human, and just extend that kindness and that love that they need. And if they need further resources, that we can get them connected. But just letting them know, and they appreciate it so much. And so I love that aspect too. Yeah.
My name is Joseph A. Potts Jr., and I've been living in this particular area overall, as far as the Garden Ridge, Selma, Church, Cibolo area since December of 2000. I have been living in specifically Cibolo for, I believe, it's 6.5 to 7 years. I'm currently, I was medically retired from the military. I volunteered during the Vietnam War. However, I was one of the fortunate ones that volunteered to go to Vietnam, but me and my buddy, who both of us agreed, we had how we got into that situation. I don't know if you remember about the Screaming Eagles airborne troop, but we both were fascinated with the patch. So when we got out of boot camp, we both volunteered to go to jump school. And they said, well, that's fine, but if you go to jump school, as soon as you get out of jump school, you're going to Vietnam. Well, we both volunteered to go to jump school. And lo and behold, we both ended up in Germany. So in the military, when you say you want to go east, tell the military you want to go west. And that's the way it works. So, and as far as my experience in communities, neighborhoods, et cetera, one of the main things that I've kind of learned over the years is mainly just be quiet and listen to people. Take a visual picture of your environment and where people live and what people have to say. And a lot of that I learned as an over-the-road trucker, an independent contractor for Grable Van Lines. And I ran over the road for 15 years with that company as an independent contractor. And I have, believe it or not, I have been to every state in the United States except Alaska. I've been to every major city in the United States and a few of the provinces in Canada because of my position with that moving company. And I can assure you that people have an amazing amount of information, intelligence, and experience. And just listening to them will give you more education than you can possibly imagine. And that's where I got a lot of mine from, plus the fact that I've been working ever since I was 10 years old.
Question 2, why are you running for Cibolo City Council, District 5?
I've been a citizen of Cibolo for a couple of years now, and I have watched the explosion of growth that has happened in just the short time that I've lived here. With such rapid growth comes a lot of challenges for not only the city, but the citizens. And I want to be the kind of citizen that doesn't just stand by and complain about everything that's going on around me. Instead, I want to be a citizen that actually stands up and uses their voice and works with city leaders to actually find solutions to the problem, not just for District 5, but for all of Cibolo.
So I'm running for city council in Cibolo because I see this as a great opportunity of where the city is in. We're kind of at a crucial moment. You know, for the longest time, Cibolo had been very highly residential, and a lot of that burden or the tax burden fall on residents with the minimal commercial property that we had. And, you know, we just opened HEB. A lot of other businesses are coming into the area, and that's an exciting time and also presents an opportunity for a lot more revenue for the city that's not pushed on to the residents via property taxes. And there's a lot of infrastructure that the city needs to improve upon, whether that be roads, adding sidewalks. A lot of the service programs have been kind of neglected that need to start being addressed. And, you know, it's kind of the same reason why I jumped on the HOA is we were at a crucial moment and I wanted to be in there and be a part of that problem-solving process.
I'm running because I really would like to make a difference. I also feel like as a resident, I have the opportunity to. I am not a politician. I have not been involved in politics, but I follow it. So I want to say this side of the pandemic, I think it woke a lot of people up, and I wanted to become more involved. And so it started with small steps and also engaging with my kids, just as well as teaching them about good citizenship and talking about government and all of those things, and really bringing it in as a family and understanding everyone's roles and doing this alongside with them to better educate myself on it. It just kind of grew into this passion, you know, and also just being available as a resident to now step out and actually serve my city. You know, and so I would like to say that, you know, governing your own house is a great way to practice. Obviously, it's on a smaller scale, but we do budgeting, don't we? Yeah. We hold each other accountable, don't we? Yes. And also we have leadership roles as, you know, parents over our children. And also, how do we engage the residents in our home just as well? And how do we listen to them? And how do we meet them halfway? And how do we also exercise our authority in a compassionate and reasonable manner just as well? So I just kind of felt like different ways that I've stepped up also even at church with leadership and engaging people. And also, not to mention, you know, working with the YMCA. I like to call myself a people person. You know, so I love engaging, and with all of that, I'm not averted also to the hard stuff that comes along with that when you are a people person. So I have partaken on, you know, resolving conflict resolution, and this is why my faith directs me more in that, you know, that Matthew 18 model of how do we resolve conflict? You know, how should we do that well? And like the fighting and the, you know, my way is right, your way is wrong. It just doesn't bring us to unity. And I do believe that sometimes unity over conformity should be an angle that we should consider, you know, really coming together, reasoning together, listening to one another, and it just really coming to a solution, you know, after all of that. So I kind of feel like maybe that's something I can also contribute towards the city council creating that synergy, really kind of bringing in that unity. And that's one thing about also City Council, I think, is just it's such a dynamic group that you have a group of people that have different walks of life, experiences, and they have gifts and talents, strengths, and you can pull all of that out within different individuals. And if you can bring that synergy about it in the right way, the wonders that you can do for a city, right? I think it was mentioned once that, someone shouldn't just roll out of bed and decide to do something like this. But I was thinking, but what if everyone rolled out of bed and wanted to become a public servant and to serve well? How much better of a city, state, country would we be of having that servant mentality to move towards a good common goal?
Well, the fact that I live in District 5, which is a good reason. But ever since I moved into that particular district, it's kind of a different district than some of the other ones. The particular home that I moved into, that particular area was just incorporated, I'm told by my neighbor, just 10 years ago. And so a lot of the people there were grandfathered in, so to speak, but it's an older neighborhood, and people there, they still have horses, pigs, goats, and so there's some difficulties that they have there that in some of the more recent neighborhoods don't have. And one of the major concerns that they have and I have is how the road has deteriorated. And it's kind of ironic because the semis, which as we know are grossing somewhere in between 80 and 90,000 pounds, the semis that are taking product into these newer neighborhoods to create them, they somehow come up our road all the time. And the only neighborhood roads that are new and well maintained are the new neighborhoods. But the roads that the trucks use to get to those neighborhoods are in pretty bad shape, and nothing's been done. My neighbor has been there for, I believe, 40 years, and in pretty much the 40 years that he's been there, he's seen virtually no repairs done in that particular section anyway. And so, we all are on the outside looking in, and we all have our idiosyncrasies. We always have our ideas as to what should be done. But also, as we know, looking from the outside in doesn't always get you very far. And so sometimes you have, as citizens, responsibilities, and we all have them. It's just many of us just don't rise to the occasion and say, okay, I think it's time for me to get into the fray if I can. And if it happens, all that I've learned and experiences I've been exposed to, I think I could help the citizens of Cibolo, and I'd be a good fit, I think, with the individuals already there.
Question 3. What makes Cibolo a great city?
Cibolo has a lot to offer. It started out, it's still a small town, but with a lot of room for growth and improvement. There still has that close-knit community feeling, and the people here are very tight-knit and close with one another. I found that out from my own neighborhood, is people will definitely band together for what they believe in Cibolo. And I just think that there's so much room for growth and improvement if it's just handled in the right way.
To me, Cibolo is a great city. It's all about the people. I remember when I first moved here, the loading van showed up and all the neighbors came out and asked if we needed any help, talking about whether it was setting up rock walls in the front yard or if we wanted to build a pool. Everyone had a guy that that could offer those services. And it was really almost overwhelming for me because coming from Oregon, we didn't really interact with our neighbors as much to just kind of have that real sense of community. And that's what I love. And I see it all the time online. People will ask questions. Hey, I need this service. I need that service. Does anybody have any extra of this? And especially during the jumpstart of the pandemic, when we were going through toilet paper shortages, food shortages, everyone was jumping online. Hey, I got extra of this. I got extra of that. I'm willing to offer it up, or some of our elderly citizens that couldn't get to and from the stores. We had people offering to do carpool services. It's amazing to me to see a bunch of people come together for the collective good, and it's the choices they made. Nobody was forcing anybody to volunteer any of these services. It was just what was genuinely in people's hearts, and that's what I love about being here and in this community.
So many things make Cibolo a great city. One of the things that I love, first of all, is the buffalo. Such a sacred symbol, honestly, and it just touches me in a very deep level, considering the history and the Native Americans, from Cibolo. And apart from that, I love the families that have come in. I have 5 children myself, and I love that we have such a great diversity in our city. I love that some of our neighbors are retired. Some of our neighbors have kids our own age, some other, just that diversity. So our kids get to grow up with next door neighbor who she bakes us cookies. And then we get to bake her stuff and take it over to her house, and I can lean on her and say, hey, would you mind hemming my pants? Like, I need to go to a podcast. And she's like, yes, absolutely, I will. And just being there for one another. And so that is something that I love, that extension of going out. We're not just going home, pulling up the garage door and being isolated. We're actually coming out when it comes to Christmas. We're exchanging. I don't want to tell y'all what street I live on because y'all are going to try to move to my street. There's a house for sale. But, and just that, if we can just, that's what I like Cibolo. I was so impressed by everyone being so warm and kind and generous. It was just so easy to really go out. And that's how I see Cibolo. Engaging other families also just as well through my interaction with the YMCA, through residents of Cibolo. They're just amazing people. And it's just no wonder that we enjoy being there. I love the size of the territory. I love the potential that it has in growth. And it makes me excited, for families to come in and to experience that. So it's like we are growing at an unprecedented, way. But I think we could do that responsibly. And I'd like to have more families and more businesses come in just as well. So it's like we're at the beginning here, and things are looking really good. And I just like to be a part of that.
The neighbors and the way that even the downtown was structured. But, I think what it is mainly, more than anything else, is just a lot of the people, they move there and they don't mind change, but they don't want the kind of change that's really going to deteriorate how Cibolo got started and what has maintained Cibolo through the years, which are the individuals that have been there for generations. But it seems like when a lot of the new neighborhoods come in and new people come in, then the people that actually have put time, blood, and effort through generations, they're the ones in their neighborhoods are the ones that are getting forgotten. And the newer neighborhoods are the ones that are up in the forefronts. And, that's not the way it should be. Growth is great, but let's not forget the ones that actually allowed the growth to get this far.
Question 4. What are the most important challenges facing Cibolo?
Definitely the rapid growth. We can't stop the rapid growth of Cibolo, but we can definitely plan better for the future, planning more long-term. We need to actually embrace not only just the new citizens coming into Cibolo, but also respect the citizens that are still here.
So I think right now the biggest challenge we have is infrastructure. Cibolo went through mass expansion. I moved in here really kind of during the peak of that expansion, but I have been in San Antonio in years past through different military stations, And the San Antonio area, as well as all the suburbs, were definitely not as large as they were when I moved back here. So we've gone through mass expansion, and I think our biggest hurdle is catching up with the infrastructure. A lot of developments went up, to bring more residents in and, brought revenue to the city, but the infrastructure's playing catch up. So we have a lot of roads that when they were first designed weren't meant for the traffic flow that they're dealing with now, that need to be addressed. Granted, 1103 is not a city road, but with that expansion, it's kind of long overdue with how many developments went in along 1103. And I've talked to other citizens in different communities, and they've talked about needing sidewalks in a lot of these older neighborhoods that weren't put in when the developer went in, for safety. So I think infrastructure is really the biggest hurdle we have, and how to be able to prioritize, what we need to address first, because, the city cannot write a blank check to everything. Things need to be racked and stacked and prioritized, but really look at how do we support this continuing expansion, because cities grow over time and they're going to continue to grow. It's just how do you manage that growth properly, making sure you have the infrastructure in place to support the population that you're bringing into the city.
Important challenges facing Cibolo is the rapid growth. The infrastructure wasn't necessarily in place for the rapid growth, so I feel like we're having to play catch up. So having said that, we need to make room and space for families to come in, and also for businesses to come in. We really need more businesses in our area. I'd like to reinvest my own money into my own city for the reinvestment of our infrastructure to do that well. I like to see, I'm a one-stop shop kind of girl. I like to shop local. I like to be local. I like to stay. And that's another reason that I like Cibolo, is that where I live, everything is just within like a 5-mile radius. If I have to drive into, Selma, it's a long way off. So I just love the conveniences. If we can do more of that and keeping that local, I think that we would be really helping the city. But right now, I believe the rapid growth is the infrastructure and the lack of businesses that we have to really, cater to our families that are here and that are coming.
I would say, first of all, it's the growth. And at times, and I have just recently been going to the city council meetings because if you're going to get into the fray, you need to know how the fray works. And it seems to me that many of the council members, they're concerned. They're concerned about the individuals. And many of them seem seemingly to be truthful and honest about their concerns about what's happening in certain neighborhoods. But sometimes growth actually diminishes and covers up what a lot of the individuals were thinking about doing. Sometimes, let me put it this way, large cities starting up, and I've been through thousands of them in the United States. And sometimes a city is like a horse in a barn. After the horse leaves, they shut the barn door, or they plan without really thoroughly exposing all of future possible problems that this could bring into a neighborhood. And unfortunately, the people that suffer from it are the ones that should be suffering from it in the first place, because many of them didn't want that kind of major growth so quickly. And so, again, I think a lot of people fall by the wayside or are lost in the cracks. And so it's balance. It's always balance. And the only way you're going to get balance is to have input from the people it most affects, serious input. And I've seen throughout the country that a lot of time that's not the case. it's, your city manager or the individual zoning commissions. And so, again, if they would, I just think that the more input you have from the people that it's going to affect, it just creates a much better environment for everyone, and everyone will benefit from it at that point.
Question 5, have you served on any committees in Cibolo, and or what's your favorite Cibolo event?
I haven't served on any formal committees in Cibolo, but I have definitely been involved with the community as far as with the school. I've been a band mom. I've been a athletics mom. I've actually done a lot of stuff in my own personal neighborhood. I've organized a lot of events. I'm kind of like the event coordinator for my own neighborhood. And what was the second part?
And what's your favorite Cibolo event?
Oh, there's a lot of great Cibolo events. I love Cibolo Fest, Cibolo Nights, barbecue cook-off, lots of stuff. I think it's great that we have so many new things that gets the community together and involved. And I would really look forward to making a lot more of that happen.
So I've not served on any committees in Cibolo. My service has been on the 2 HOA boards that I currently serve on. My favorite event in city is definitely the barbecue cook-off. I got to be a judge last year, and that was some amazing brisket that I got to taste. And, I walked a little slow for, probably a couple hours after that. But, these are things that we really never had an opportunity to experience where I grew up. There wasn't a whole lot of community events, and Barbecue Fest being my favorite one. But I see all the vendor markets and fairs, and it seems like every time I get online, there's another event popping up, and it's just great because again, that just builds that sense of community, and I get to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't normally have the opportunity to meet if our paths hadn't crossed. So.
Have I served on any committees in Cibolo? No, I haven't. But not because I didn't want to. It's because at the certain time in my past, I was being called to serve in other areas, as I mentioned earlier, like a homeless ministry, also doing the food pantry with our church. And but I am more than after all of this, I would definitely love to engage. I was actually talking to my 18-year-old daughter who's a senior this year, and I said, I think you should probably consider. and all again, it's just for good citizenship, because I shared with my kids, it's important for us to actually step forward and do more for our community and to get involved, because even though if and when it happens that you do move away from Cibolo, that you can continue serving your community and your city. It's just part of good citizenship, right? And so many times people don't know about these committees, and I know they do a really great job at advertising it, so it's not the city, right? It's just, families are just so busy between work and between school and helping in other ways. And so it's at no fault to anyone else, right? And so, all right, so one of my favorite Cibolo events, I have to say, is going to be Basura Bash, okay? Basura Bash. Yes, Basura Bash. And that is trash cleanup, right? Trash cleanup. And I love this because I have noticed, just driving through our highways in Texas, that I've noticed there's a lot of trash everywhere. I don't know if that happened because of lack of staff within our cities, but I remember there was a time where Texas prided itself in these big signs, "Don't mess with Texas," and it was all about littering my entire life growing up. And now I see just trash just about everywhere. And my husband and I, we also facilitate a married group in our home every Sunday, just again, an extension out to community. And we were discussing, how about we go together as a group? We'll get some yellow little jackets and we'll just go clean up the city and just go out there. And so Basura Bash has to be one of the ones that sticks, closest to me, because it's going out there, it's making a difference, and it's making and keeping our city beautiful.
First question, no, I have not been on any boards as of yet. Cibolo's best event, I would think the few parades that they have, because that kind of gets the varied numbers of people involved, older, younger, whatever. And it seems they have a lot of fun, which is what small cities should be able to do, small towns should be able to do, is to get together and shake off all that's going on and just for a few hours, just have fun and enjoy themselves. And I think, unfortunately, we're missing out on a lot of that anymore these days.
Question 6. Are there any pressing issues specifically facing District 5?
Right now, the pressing issue is the big talk about the apartment complex that is in the talks to go on 1103 right by Turning Stone and Foxbrook. That's been a big talk that I've seen on social media. It was presented at the P&Z meeting the other day, and there's a lot of concerned citizens about that right now that are worried. We really don't want to have a huge apartment complex going up right there. So I would say that's kind of that's kind of a pressing news thing that's going on. But as far as what's going on that we need to address right now is, once again, infrastructure. There's 1103 project is really important right now. We need to make sure that stays on task. We need the road expansion. We need the road improvement. We need new stoplights, and we need sidewalks. So I see a lot of infrastructure and safety issues that need to be addressed.
Yes. So for District 5, Dean Road is one of the main roads that is used. I know they just recently kind of repaved Old Weiderstein, which was good at addressing some of those infrastructure issues I brought up. But Dean Road's a big one. Not only is it heavily used by residents now, but Foxbrook is actually building the last piece of their subdivision back there, which is only going to increase that traffic. But along the lines with Dean Road, again, a lot of these areas do need sidewalks as well. I like to run out in the neighborhoods. Fortunately, my neighborhood does have a sidewalk, so I'm able to avoid traffic for the most part. But I've been in other communities where you don't have that opportunity, and it's not just the runners. You have new moms that want to push the stroller out in the street, or we have a lot of elderly citizens, and we need to provide an avenue for them to be able to enjoy the great weather that we get 9-10 months out of the year, but safely.
I would say a pressing issue is zoning. I would say that I know that there's a lot of multifamily things that want to come in, and I feel that these zones that are already zoned commercially should remain commercial. As I mentioned before, I feel like our district is also at a good spot to bring in some local businesses, and I would like to see about allowing that to come in, again, because there's already an infrastructure plan that was already in place, and having more homes come in let's say, the stretch of 1103 is just going to ruin that new infrastructure. So I would, let's go ahead and move businesses in, so that way our citizens can benefit from our city.
Well, I know that they're talking about redistricting. But it's just in the planning stages as of right now. Nothing has been quite determined as of yet. And I would like to get some more information about that, of course, before I make any decision about it, pro or con. But again, that's the one reason why I've started to spend more time in the committee meetings. I started last year going, but I kind of fell off, shall we say. So I've been pretty diligent so far these last couple of months. And I believe that once I get my head around what's actually going on in the city and the council and the things that are coming up, it's, it'll widen my knowledge to what's going on and what the particulars are. And it's not only listening to the council members, but more importantly, the citizenry that shows up. because without both sides of it, you can't really make a wise decision or even a common sense decision without having that information.
Question 7. Have you started campaigning? If so, what have you learned?
I've been campaigning for a while. The first thing that I did when I decided to run for this office is to try to educate myself on the current issues that are going on in Cibolo by attending the city council meetings, watching the P&Z meetings. I really wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about before I got out there and started speaking to the citizens. I go out, I do a lot of door hanging and block walking. It's nice to actually just interact with people. And it's amazing once you start talking to them, how open they are to tell you what their biggest concerns are, which is great for me because I tell them where my vision is and they tell me what their vision is. And the campaigning thing is going pretty well because I'm learning new things from the citizens themselves that I need to address in this campaign. I think there's lots of different ways to get to people. A lot of people use social media. I don't tend to use social media as much as other people. I think I'd rather just actually talk to people in person rather than engaging in a lot of different conversations that may or may not be positive to my campaign.
The District 5 is a lot bigger than I thought. Serving on the 2 HOA boards I do with the 2 communities, I initially kind of thought that was the bulk of District 5. And I've had the opportunity to go to other subdivision HOA meetings, meet with other people, and you kind of see things from their perspective and their area that they live in, but also kind of getting more of a historical perspective on how Cibolo is where it is today. Like I said, I've only been here for about 4 years, so even though I've been here for a little bit, I haven't been here long enough to be able to have that experience and have gone through a lot of the changes that Cibolo has gone through. So it's been great for me, not only meeting different citizens in Cibolo and District 5, but also, I've taken an opportunity to meet different business owners as well. One thing I always tell people is, yes, I'm running to represent District 5 at council, but the things that are done at city council do not just affect District 5, it affects the city as a whole. So it's important to, although get out and reach your constituents that are going to vote for you, I still want to hear from other people and the concerns that they have.
Yes, I have started campaigning. I've learned a lot. First of all, you lose sleep. You lose a lot of sleep. And even though you pray, can you please, Lord, give me like 7.5 hours tonight? You don't get it. You fall asleep thinking about it. You wake up thinking about it. And also, I have really leaned on the Lord even a whole lot more. And so really not trusting in myself, not trusting, in a lot of opinions of a lot of other people, and just really trusting in the Lord and how I honestly, I feel like this is a calling. And I know that we always pray for good leadership and we always pray that good people rise up and make a difference. And this particular time I saw this opportunity and I thought, instead of praying about it, why don't I just go ahead and do it? And that wasn't a thought of in myself. I literally just kind of thought, okay, Lord, is this you? And it was more of a calling. So what I've learned, and this is going to go a little bit off the typical answer of like all the campaign stuff, but the thing that I've learned is leaning on Him, right? Praying for wisdom, praying for discernment already, listening carefully, going to the city council meetings, listening to the residents, listening to all the different perspectives and all the different challenges that face every single agenda item that goes in, looking to the city council persons and listening to what they have to say, realizing that it's not just an easy white and black answer. There's many times some gray in between. So having said all that, it's been beyond insightful.
I have started campaigning with a few of my neighbors, and they don't let you really finish sometimes. even they know what district they're in, but that doesn't seem to register in their minds. The first thing they want you to do is fix everything that hasn't been fixed since they've been living there. But you do appreciate their concern. Of course, you want them to be concerned because you want them to give you solid, concrete information and complaints. And so, you talk with them and you listen. I think that the best thing that I've learned overall is just shut your mouth and listen to people. Take time, digest it, never be in a hurry for it. And I guarantee you, whatever needs to be done through patience, God-given common sense, and just taking your time. And I always say the difference between a genius and a non-genius is time. So you give yourself enough time and you can come up with a proper solution that hopefully with enough input, everybody can at least come to the table and we can get to a decision that it may not please everybody, but you're never going to do that anyway. But for the most part, you can get a pretty good consensus when you bring that to the table in that format.
Question 8 comes from Councilwoman Katie Cunningham. Okay, City Council is nonpartisan and requires council members to work together towards the success of a city. How will you work with others who have different ideas? Can you set aside personal beliefs and opinions?
Everybody is going to have personal opinions. That's just human nature. But you can't let your own personal beliefs and opinions get in the way of what is going to help move forward for the rest of the community. You can't use your own agendas. You need to just respect people and their opinions and their beliefs and try to make their beliefs part of yours as well.
Absolutely. That's something I do on the HOA board right now. Even though I'm the president of the HOA board, there's many things that I cannot do without the votes of the other board members. And one thing I've learned through that process is even though I may have a vision, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else is going to have that same vision. So if I have an idea, I bring it to the board. Hey, this is kind of the project I want to tackle, and this is how I want to go about it. But it's really, you open it up to the group. And just because I have an idea and someone may disagree does not mean that their countering points can't make the idea I had even better. Because I just represent one opinion. I want to hear from everybody else and try to figure out a way of how can we accomplish what we need to that's best for the community and get everyone involved. So that's something that I do on the HOA boards. It's something I've done in the military, especially when I was more junior rank and I didn't have a lot of authority. I just had a lot of opinion, is try to be able to present my plan or my potential course of action and get that buy-in from senior leaders to be able to push that plan forward. When you're working on either a board or a council or any type of committee, when you start to talk to the other members and understand where their priorities are, you can tend to find compromise to where everyone can accomplish what they're looking at and everyone can do what's right for the community and move forward. But yeah, you got to have everybody coming together and looking towards the greater good. And, sometimes people's opinions conflict with each other, and that's okay. At the end of the day, you got to do what you feel is right and try to get everyone else on board to push that process through. But, there's no hard feelings. There's a reason why, city council is 7 council members. Otherwise, it'd be one person pushing one agenda to get whatever they thought was best to get done.
I believe in listening to others. Absolutely. I believe, again, that working with other council members everyone has different walks of life, different perspectives, a lot to contribute, different gifts, different strengths, and we need to lean on one another with those. Yes, I can also put my personal feelings aside. I can, and this is what's beautiful. It's like, let's come to reason together with one another. This is not about me fighting to get my own way. And I hope that's also reciprocated, that I will also be listened to and considered as my, within my perspective. But yes, I am very much, willing and capable of collaborating and working closely with the agenda at hand and looking at it from different angles just as well.
Of course, you have to. I mean, if you're going to be successful, if you go in there with predetermined ideas and you're going to go, and let me fall back again on what I said earlier about going to the council meetings and watching and listening to how they handle it with the different types of personalities of the citizens in the audience. And I've been quite pleased how they do that. They're not there to bicker. They're there really to resolve the issues as quickly as they can and bring in whoever is necessary that they need, whether it's the planning and zoning or police or fire or whatever, and bring them in to have the questions exposed to them and have the people there that can truly answer the questions. And so, sure, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all.
Question 9 from Councilwoman Katie Cunningham. If you received $1 million grant to use in the city, what would you use it on and why?
There's a lot of different things that you can use that money for. I would say beyond just roads and stuff that we already have bonds for, I would like to see a lot of park improvement on stuff that we already have in place, but maybe just improve upon a little bit, upgrade our parks, revitalize our parks, maybe add some more outdoor activities like a city dog park or a skate park or something where people who have common interests can get together and socialize.
So I would address the service shortfalls that we have. I know, speaking to a number of residents, there are some services that the city is responsible for that have kind of fallen short in recent years. For example, I know that the animal shelter, I've heard from a lot of constituents that is one of their big priorities. So, you got to look at, because although $1 million is great, in the grand scheme of government, it really doesn't cover that much. You kind of have to look at, okay, what can we fix with that money that would actually make a difference? There's a lot of things you can do with $1 million that is really putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. For instance, I've talked about infrastructure. If I wanted to repave a road, well, $1 million may only get me a couple 100 feet down the way, and then it'd be a half-complete project. Or, if I wanted to build sidewalks in the community, I may get 2 blocks and have to stop. So I think addressing those service shortfalls that have been at the front of a lot of the people I've talked to's minds would be the first step in seeing how can I best utilize that $1 million to make an improvement today. And then we'd have to look at finding more money to keep that process going.
Something that was considered that I really liked the proposition for is somehow connecting Cibolo to I-10. Being that we are very reliant on I-35, it's important to have different points of exit access. And as I mentioned before, I don't think that $1 million would be sufficient. And there's a lot of other things involved with, agricultural land between here and there that needs to be considered. But when I heard about this proposition, I very much would like to see something like that happen for Cibolo, especially with more people living, the city growing close to 40,000 people already. And we need to have more access exit points for safety if anything were to happen.
Students and young people that don't have active work positions during the summer And perhaps depending upon how much would be used to get them involved in things such as, I don't know, cleaning up the roads, cutting grasses in certain areas, or just going to maybe some of the older areas where the elderly can't actually do for themselves as they used to, cut the grass, trim the trees to a certain extent, rake, do a little landscaping. The young people would not only benefit from it financially, but they would also get the benefit from the experience of doing these other agricultural, physical things in the neighborhoods for people who can't do it themselves. And then again, if like I was getting ready to mention, if there's anything left over, see what kind of programs schools could come up with in the summertime for apprenticeships, so that we could really get more of the young kids better prepared for their future. And I have to fall back on when I was going to high school. We had shop, we had carpentry work, electrical programs. I mean, when we came out of high school, you could open a business right from there. I mean, and for the ladies, I don't know all their programs, but I was aware of some of them. They could cook and sew. And again, those things are things that you need to survive, and it's, if you can have that from Jump Street, it just gives you a complete different mindset as to the world and work ethics and how you're going to progress from this point on.
Question number 10 is also from our final question from Councilwoman Katie Cunningham. If you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why?
The biggest zoning issue going on right now is the rezoning of Old Town, the overlay, and also the rezoning of the 12 or so houses that are across from HEB. So I think that those are things that I would like to see changed.
So I think specifically for downtown Cibolo, there needs to be more flexibility as far as residential versus commercial. I think downtown Cibolo presents a great opportunity for economic growth without having to go through the mass population expansion that Cibolo's gone through the last several years. I know currently that's been at the front of a lot of residents' minds and business owners alike downtown in that area, but they need to make that process a lot smoother and a lot simpler to allow people to do what they feel is best for their property. I think there's a lot of missed opportunity when certain areas are not able to be rezoned from residential to commercial. And that is a great strip of land for someone to open a business, especially with HEB opening up and all the other businesses are going to go in between Main Street and Cibolo Valley Drive.
Well, as of right now, I would probably have to rely on staff to figure out what would need to be changed.
Commercial zoning. I know some of that is in question now. But when people move into an area and it's designated residential, and back in the day, many of us, when we moved into an area, a neighborhood, city, state, whatever, it pretty much was a permanent move. And so if 10 years later down the road, or let's say 30 years down the road, because a lot of these laws are on the books for hundreds of years at times, and now you've retired, your house is paid for, and for the most part, you're living quite comfortable and happy. And then all of a sudden, somebody buys a lot in front of you, behind you, or on side of you, and they want to put up a mall. And there's a possibility that they could change the zoning right next to your residential property and put a mall that is obviously going to disrupt a lot of people's neighborhoods. And so, and again, we know how corporations work, and we also know how politics works. If you have the money, you pretty much will get what you want. That's not the way it should be. People, especially elderly, especially the older neighborhoods, I believe should trump anything that comes in and wants to disrupt that. So as far as the one thing that I would like to see more than anything else, that if it was set up for residential, that it stays residential indefinitely.
Pardon the interruption. It has come to our attention that the following 4 questions were released to the Cibolo District 5 Facebook page prior to being released by the podcast. We wanted to interrupt this because we want to assure you that those questions were already recorded and already in editing and near completion, if not done at that time. We just wanted to make our audience aware because people contacted us with questions about it. Enjoy the rest of the show. All right. We have some questions from the members of the community. Question number 11 comes from Nick Marquez, the owner of the Old Main Ice House. He wants to know, do you think we should keep the noise ordinance as is or change it back to being less restrictive? And how will you support small businesses in Cibolo?
I think that the sound ordinance, it went into place last year because of a lot of anonymous calls that were made for noise complaints. I feel that there's a lot more people in Cibolo now that are attending these concerts and going to these different venues. I think that you have to be respectful of the people that live there, but I also know that these venues are what keep these businesses alive, and that's the music and the people coming there. And when you get a large group of people together, of course, especially if they've been drinking, tend to get a little bit loud. So in answer to that, I think from what I understand, the ordinance is 75 decibels between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. and 65 between 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. But these venues can also pay the special permit, which I think is $50 a year, which gives them the extra hour to be at 75 decibels. I do think it's a little bit restrictive, but I also think that it's a respectable amount for the neighbors around, because it's a very small area where these venues are in relation to where these neighborhoods are. So I just think they've kind of found a common ground, because from what I understand, there hasn't been any other noise complaints between October and February of this year, according to Chief Huggins.
So to answer the first part, I absolutely think we need to go back to being less restrictive. One, it's a commercial area. There's going to be noise. And if I'm not mistaken, the old mill or the mill used to actually be a no kidding sawmill. And so there's always been noise in that downtown area. And, you've got Old Main, you've got Ernie's, you've got Rooted Fork, 1908. Those are all entertainment establishments. And I don't think the best utilization of the limited resources that Cibolo has, particularly with its law enforcement, is to be enforcing what I believe to be restrictive noise ordinances. Again, I don't want to say every day, but periodically you check online and you see another community talking about car prowlers, break-ins, and, it's easy for me to sit back and say, well, why weren't the police there? Well, and I'm not trying to attribute the fact that one police officer was enforcing noise ordinance, which is why that vehicle got broke into. But I just think that there are bigger priorities that go on within the city of Cibolo. And Cibolo is relatively safe, especially compared to other neighborhoods, but noise ordinance should definitely be lower on the totem pole. And there is an expectation in that area that there's going to be noise because there are entertainment venues. I know Old Main and Ernie's both have live music, and I've been there during these concerts and feel they've done what they can to mitigate that noise. I mean, I am well aware that there are still residents nearby. What's the second part of that question?
Support small businesses in Cibolo.
Oh. And as far as supporting small business Cibolo, I think we need to make the process a lot less restrictive on the same lines with the noise ordinance. I've talked to a lot of business owners, and a lot of them, their number one gripe is all the agony and paperwork and money they have to spend to be able to open up shop in Cibolo. And a lot of them even contemplating moving their business and over into Shirts or another location. And that's really a detriment to the city, is not only are we not providing those easy opportunities for people to be able to set up businesses locally where that money gets to stay, now we're shifting that into our neighboring city and forcing everyone to go spend their money over there where that money is going to stay within Shirts, as opposed to keeping it locally, being able to fund all the great things that we want to do.
Let me go ahead and answer the second part of that question first, because I want to make it known that I am very much for small business. My mom, she owned a Mexican-American food restaurant in Atkins, Texas, and I got to be a part of that startup at the very, very beginning. And she ended up selling it because she got a really great offer. But I realized the challenges that small businesses have, and I realize, as you know, downtown Cibolo is growing and promoting for more businesses to come in, that we also have to also listen to the voices of the resident, but also listen to the voices of the businesses and see how we can come into a mutual agreement. And so not to deter the businesses, but also to not deter the quality of life for our residents. So this is definitely going to have to go in with great wisdom and discernment.
I think the noise ordinances probably would have to be researched with the neighboring businesses and residences. Find out first what the issues are, and I think it's a simple fix. If it was a business, if it was like for instance a home turned into a business, obviously the neighborhood around it never thought about a noise ordinance or how loud a particular business or home would be, and so if they came in and started having bands, et cetera, on the weekends, which would be their right. But I believe, again, you bring the owner of that establishment along with the neighbors there and the other people that would control that, which would be the police department, obviously. Again, bring them to the table, find out what the major issue is, and have it resolved. Plain and simple.
Question 12, Donovan Jackson with the Nobel Group. Do you feel that property currently listed as commercial in the FLUM, future land use map, should be rezoned to match what is currently listed in Cibolo's FLUM? Specifically, should the dozen houses on Main Street across from HEB be allowed to change their zoning from single-family residential to C1 commercial zoning?
Well, this is something that I spoke about earlier on the zoning issue. For one thing, we have the whole zoning issue going on in Old Town with the overlay, where they are trying to give the people their choice if they want to be commercial or residential. I think we should also give that same option to those people that right now are zoned for for residential, so that they have the option to be commercial if that's what they choose. There's a lot of people behind them, I understand, that don't want commercial to go in there. But I think if it's done in the right way, there could be a lot of businesses that wouldn't affect the neighbors behind them. And I also think that you should have some respect for those 12 people who maybe want to leave and they can't right now because not too many people are going to volunteer to buy a house right across from HEB. So I think they should be given the choice if they want to stay residential or they want to be zoned commercial so that they can sell to investors. I think they should be given basically the same rights as the people downtown in the overlay zoning.
Absolutely. Again, I mentioned previously about the great opportunity in that strip. HEB brings a lot of attraction. It's one of the trademarks of the San Antonio area. And it offers a lot of flexibility for those homeowners. By rezoning it commercial, then you have the opportunity to sell that to a developer that can develop that land into other small businesses or even, some of the big brick and mortars. But it offers those residents to be able to decide what to do with their land, which I think is one of the hallmarks that makes America the greatest country in the world, is that freedom and flexibility that we offer that you don't get anywhere else. And not only does it offer that flexibility, but having property that is zoned to commercial use increases its value. And, if someone wants to sell their home and retire and move off somewhere else, you want to be able to get as much value as you can out of your property to be able to move on to that next stage in your life. And I can only see more net positive of allowing that commercial zoning than negative. And again, sometimes government needs to get out of the way and let people live their lives and do what they want to do.
I know this agenda item is very much a hot topic, so thank you, Donovan, for the question. Okay, so I have had an opportunity to listen to many different residents as well as, what's going on from, the brokers in this particular area. One thing that I heard that really settled well with me is, and as I mentioned before, I am for bringing in businesses to Cibolo, so I would agree with bringing that into commercial property. However, not at the expense of not protecting the residents that live behind it. I enjoyed listening to a proposition of possibly a large noise wall being installed, something that, that can help protect the residents in their neighborhood. So again, it's like we have to look at this from different angles and how can we help our businesses grow, but also how can we protect the safety of our residents?
No.
Question 13 is from Mayor Mark Allen, Mayor of Cibolo. Do you feel it is right to require homeowners to install sprinkler systems in their ceilings like you normally see in office buildings if they live in a home that isn't close enough to a fire hydrant, and to turn off their utilities and prevent them from living on their own property if they don't install the aforementioned ceiling sprinkler system?
I followed all of that was going on with council during the council meetings, and I feel there's a lot to that. I don't think that particular family should have been required to put in a fire suppression system just to live in a place where they had already paid for the land, the home. Everything had been, all the permits had been done that were required. I feel there was a lot more to that than just the fire suppression system. I think that the developer out there should have been held a little bit more accountable, as well as GVSUD, who should also, maybe they shouldn't have been selling those properties out there until that infrastructure was in place. And then once the people had already moved there, have an afterthought that, oh, it's not in place. Now these people have to go out of their way to provide their own fire system just to live there when there's already other homes out there who weren't required to do that.
Actually, the last city council meeting I went to, this very scenario was what I spoke about. And absolutely not. That family had been through a lot. They had gone through the process, the list that the city manager had given them of the things they needed to do to that land, and ultimately the holdup was this fire suppression system, which is not cheap to install either. And, when I started to look at that, it wasn't in a subdivision where you have a house right next to a house where you're really concerned about if house number 1 catches fire, is that going to be pushed over to house number 2? This was out in, call it the farm area, where you got a house and nothing but land between them and the next house. And, the homeowners there understood the risks with the existing water infrastructure that was in place. We had spoken with some of the board members on the Green Valley SUD board, and that area was in the plans, and they're looking to get that addressed sooner rather than later. But the homeowners had put fire extinguishers in the house. They understood the risks without having that water supply. And, it's decisions we make every day in life. We accept a certain amount of risk. Every time we get in a car, we accept the risk that there either is going to be debris that could cause an accident, drunk drivers, whatever the case may be. You have to mitigate your own risk and decide what is acceptable. And shutting utilities off because of, we'll call it an error made on another entity's part that was not the responsibility of these landowners, is appalling at best to me. Again, the city's not meant there to make your lives miserable. They're meant to protect us from each other, but not protect you from yourself.
Well, I can tell that that's a very specific question from a very specific agenda item. But in general, if we look about just home ownership, as a previous mortgage loan officer, I understand all that entails within. I worked with new homes. I worked with existing homes. I worked with new home builders. So I understand a lot of the regs that go into homes. I also used to do, purchases for manufactured homes and that sort of retrofit foundations and all of that. So having said that, it's not practical for every single home to have a sprinkler system inside of their house. But I know this particular agenda item was a little bit more involved, more than just sprinkler systems.
No.
Question 14 comes from Jayme Mathis. He is the owner of 1908 in Kindling, Texas Kitchen. Are you aware of the Old Town downtown zoning that was approved in 2010? And what is your opinion of that?
Also a really big topic right now. That all that was rezoned in 2010 to commercial property. And that gave a lot of the businesses that are down there now a chance to become businesses. And I think that what's going on down there is unfair to the people who, I understand that the city sent out letters to give the citizens the option to change from commercial back to residential. And I understand that there was also a lot of non-responsive people down there who didn't make the choice. But I don't think that by not responding that you're in fact agreeing to that. There's been a lot of people who maybe didn't receive the letter, or what if you're a renter down there and you got the letter and you thought, well, this doesn't really pertain to me. I don't own this property. And you just throw the letter away. You don't even tell your landlord or anything about it. So I don't think that by using non-response, that should be terms as it's okay to do it.
Yes. So my understanding of that is that was giving residents in that area the option to either allow their residency to stay at commercial use or opt over into residential use. The issue, from my understanding, is those notices were not sent out certified. So there's no guarantee that these people were even made aware of that option and that they could choose one or the other. And some of those homes are actually rented out, and there's no guarantee that the tenants that were staying in those homes would pass that information along to the actual homeowner or property owner. And this kind of goes back to the point about those homes across from HEB. if you're going to put out something like that to gauge response, to be able to make a decision at council, you need to ensure that every single one of those residents was at least given the option to read the information. Sending things out uncertified, there's no guarantee that that letter made it to them or got tossed into the junk mail. But you need to ensure that people have that opportunity to make the decision that's best for them, decide what to do with their property. And then if you're using that information to bring it to a council vote, again, ensuring that every single one of those residents had the opportunity to weigh in. Now, if they choose not to weigh in, then that is also their choice. Some people just don't want to give their opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're not guaranteeing that that got to the masses and you're getting the best information back, then you're not doing your job right.
In going to a recent city council meeting, I have learned about, the former, 2010 zoning areas. It's a mixture between commercial and residential. And again, hearing different local perspectives, and also considering Cibolo's growth, I was also of the opinion that it should remain the way that it is. Future council created this particular zoning for a reason, and seeing in the future in mind of how Cibolo would grow, and now that we have, again, unprecedented numbers already in our city, right? It helps and gives opportunity for business growth.
I have just recently heard some information at one of the council meetings about that. Not terribly aware of the particulars about it, and before I would want to make any comment, I think I need to be a little bit more intelligent about it.
Question 15 comes from Nicholas Sherman. Nick Sherman is on the Guadalupe Green Valley Special Utility District, and he wants to know, he's on the board for the Green Valley, so he wants to know, what is GVSUD and what do they do? And how does this affect District 5?
The GVSUD is basically, I pay them. They're my water bill. Green Valley Special Utility District. They're responsible for keeping up with our water supply. They're responsible for keeping up with the water towers, bringing new lines into new neighborhoods, providing fire hydrants. They have a large responsibility in Cibolo. And what was the second part of the question?
And the second part was, how does this affect District 5?
Well, we come back to the same topic that we had about the sprinklers and that neighborhood. I think that they need to just stay on top of keeping the water supply, the new lines and everything in all the new neighborhoods that are going up. It's basically keeping up with the infrastructure. That's should be their job, and it's something they should stay on top of before new residents move into the new places.
So Green Valley SUD is a special utilities district. They service all the water and waste treatment in the area, and it's kind of weird with the way things are drawn up, because I know some people have Cibolo Water, some people have Green Valley, but their main responsibility is providing those services to the residents, and I know there are a lot of them within District 5. And I've gone to a few of the Green Valley SUD meetings, and they've gone through a lot of recent changes as far as their board, and I think they're heading in the right direction of a lot of projects that were kind of pushed to the wayside. They're going to start addressing. I know one of their initiatives with these developments is getting away from the pump and haul that they have done in a couple communities. I've driven by those communities. I can only imagine. And, they have a great responsibility for them, but also I think we as a city have a responsibility to work with them because they do service a lot of our citizens, not just in District 5, but Cibolo in general. And, there have been ups and downs like there are in any relationship, but I know a lot of the board members there, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to be able to mend that relationship and both entities work together for the greater good.
You know, that is something I actually need to look further into. I have been busy campaigning and everything else. I have actually put that on my list to look into.
Well, from my understanding, they control the water, the water and the water lines, and who gets the lines and when. Because I believe there was an issue at one of the council meetings about hydrants, fire hydrants, and it involved them to the extent that the homeowners didn't have those lines available, and the SUD was looking into it, but nothing exactly has been resolved as of yet. And that, in fact, was one of the reasons for, I believe, the sprinkling systems that had to be in the particular house that was in question. And so hopefully that'll get resolved. And whatever the council can do, again, for people that are being sold this property, and I'm assuming somebody gave them the information that there wouldn't be an issue of getting fire departments or hydrants locally to sustain any type of fire hazard on the property. So I don't know right now. I think at the last meeting they were seriously looking into it, but whether it was resolved, I don't really know it if it was at that last meeting. But as far as I'm concerned, if that's their responsibility and the property is within their district, of course it should be taken care of.
Question 16. Is there anything you want to talk about that I didn't ask?
Well, I don't have any political background. I do have a vision for Cibolo, and that is to make it a better place for all of us to work, play, and live in. And I think that entails a lot of different things. We need to, by work, we need to support more profitable, stable, profitable businesses that will not only bring revenue and tax dollars, but also jobs. HEB just added 350 new jobs. And I think that we need to keep businesses like that coming to Cibolo in order to responsibly grow it and provide not only tax dollars, but jobs for our people. The second part of that would be play, which, as I stated before, I would like to see revitalization of our parks, maybe more outdoor activities, maybe music venues that are outside the city. We have a lot of undeveloped land going on that I think we can actually find a common ground and a happy middle, maybe move some of the music further out, and maybe offer other activities outside besides just bars and music, like I had talked about before, maybe dog park, skate park, community events. And then last, one thing I do want to add that's really important to me is safety issues. We have a lot of safety issues in Cibolo. One of them being a mom of steel. I've been dropping my kids off for a long time for band, sports, whatever. I go to Steel twice a day, every day for several years. As these new neighborhoods are coming, especially Steel Creek, which is right behind Steel High School, it's made such a issue right there with traffic in front of the school. it's really just not safe for the kids. I see so many more kids now walking along 1103 trying to get to school. They come out of Buffalo Crossing, they come out of Steel Creek, and there's no sidewalks there for them to walk on. There's kids basically walking right along 1103. And the intersection right there at Knight's Way, I think is what it's called, and 1103 is, I'm surprised that nobody's gotten hurt there. There's no direction of traffic there. They need to put a light there. And above all, the 1103 thing is so important because we need sidewalks, especially right there in front of the school where our kids are walking home. And we don't have that right now. Cibolo is not a very pedestrian-friendly city. And I just think we need a lot of that, not even just for kids, but even people that want to walk just around and have a safe way to do it.
When I made the choice to go ahead and decide to run city council, I really wasn't sure what the campaigning experience was going to be like. I've helped other individuals run for various boards and, run for their own city council or mayor positions. And I mean, when you're helping somebody, you kind of get a little taste of what it's like, but you don't really have any experience doing it yourself. And I think what I've enjoyed most is just getting out and seeing and meeting different people that I would never have had the opportunity to meet in just going through my normal routine of life. I feel like I have a very good understanding of the challenges that Cibolo is up against. I think the city has made great strides in certain areas, and I think there are a lot of areas to improve on. And I welcome the opportunity to get in there and fight these fights for the citizens of Cibolo. And it's something that I've done in varying capacities of my life, both as a uniform member, community member, and I honestly look forward to the opportunity to be able to serve at a higher capacity.
One thing that I just wanted to discuss really quick is that I wanted to be a voice for residents, a voice to really encourage people to not feel deterred running for something, whether that is a committee or a board or a council or even mayor. I know a lot of people are going to come and say, what are your qualifications? What do you have to offer? And I can just encourage you that your life experiences give a lot to offer. And as a concerned citizen, if you have the passion to serve publicly, don't allow people to challenge you with the lack of qualifications, your lack of experience or anything like that. And I just reject that notion. And I feel like the city is for the people and by the people. And if we start creating long laundry lists of experienced, you have to serve 2 years as this or 2 years as that, then again, that is a deterrence for residents to stand up and to serve their cities. So I kind of felt like I want to make a difference. I want people to see that, yes, you can stand up. You don't have to feel that you're not equipped. You don't have to feel that you're inadequate, that you're not capable. Yes, you are. This is our city and you are capable of running.
The same thing I said to myself a couple of years ago, and that is, I know we all have issues. We have jobs. We have children. We have grandchildren. We have good neighbors. We have bad neighbors. We have good police, bad police. I don't know if there's a good or bad fire person or not. I don't know. I don't think so. But anyway, one of the most important things that I would hope that the council and everybody else, because all of the people that are involved in not only creating a city, but keeping it going, all of them have suggestions, and many of them are in the neighborhoods, and they can promote getting out. And if you don't go to all of the meetings, at least attend a couple a year to understand what is going on. Don't rely on somebody else, because when they came to the meeting, they had a riff. Somebody else came to the meeting and everything went well. And depending upon which neighbor you have, you're already prejudging the city and the council. But if you go yourself and just sit, you don't have to necessarily go up and speak if you don't wish to. But they do give you they do give the opportunity to do that. But at least go there, sit, and listen, and come to your own intellectual conclusions. And that probably would change the complexity and the mindset of a lot of people who really, most of the time, have a negative view of everything in the city that the people are doing. The council, the police, everybody. And then you will have your own, file cabinet of how things are being done, the concern of the council people, and how they're dealing with the issues. And you can figure it out for yourself. You have common sense. And tell you the truth, that to me is the best way of doing it.